Super Games Buster, where we take a critical look at video games and ramble, I don't know. Okay, look. I know I usually do the whole intro thing, and I know you guys are expecting Shovel Knight, but I gotta be honest, this review just came out of nowhere. I know the first game was super popular, and I know that the developer was already working on a sequel. However, I didn't think it was going to be out this quickly, nor did I think that it was going to get as popular as the first game was. I thought it was going to be out sometime next year, and that there would be more announcements leading up to it. Clearly, I was wrong. It's been about a month, and the game's been making the same rounds that the first one made. Except this time, the first game's popularity is making the sequel's popularity skyrocket. At first, I thought I'd do a short Buster Mechanics video on it to cover what the game did well. However, since I already did that with the first game, we're gonna give this one the full Super Games Buster treatment. So settle in, boys and girls, heck, get some snacks if you want. Today we're gonna be looking at the sequel to one of the most popular indie games of the year, Five Nights at Freddy's 2.
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was released on November 11th of this year, and it was independently developed by a single person, Scott Cawthon. Scott is not only responsible for this game, he's also responsible for its predecessor, the original Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Now, the first game was released around July of this year, originally on IndieDB.com. However, after its release and subsequent rise in popularity, the game saw releases on Desora, Steam, Amazon, and both Android and iOS devices. If you're watching this video, chances are you already know what the original Five Nights at Freddy's is about. The game exploded in popularity so quickly, I probably don't need to tell you about it. However, for those who are somehow hearing about this for the first time, Five Nights at Freddy's is a point-and-click survival game, where you play as a security guard working the night shift at a rundown Chuck E. Cheese knockoff. Not only do you have to deal with watching over the place via security cameras, but you also have to deal with the roaming animatronics that apparently don't quite understand that murder is illegal. As such, since you happen to be the most ill-equipped security guard in existence, the whole point of the game is to turtle up, manage your power, and avoid the animatronics for 5 nights. And let me tell you, the sequel very much follows in its predecessor's footsteps, with the name of the game literally being Surviving 5 More Nights at Freddy Fazbear's. Not only do we have a new location, but we also have new animatronics to have nightmares about.
But with all that being said, will the game simply bring more of the same, or will it try to bring something new to the table? Let's get our flashlights and find out! You know, because security guards have flashlights and... Look, writing jokes is hard!
Like the first game, the story for this game is incredibly simplistic. Security guard, night shift, pizzeria full of animatronics, don't die. However, also like the first game, there's a level of depth to the game that only comes out if you look for it. I'm going to use the term optional depth for this, since you don't really need to know the inner workings of the plot to tackle the game from beginning to end. Nonetheless, let's get into it. Like I said, you're a security guard working the night shift. Your place of employment? Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, which just went through a grand reopening after moving to a new location. The new location comes with new animatronics, which are designed to be more kid-friendly, and even come with facial recognition software that's tied to a local criminal database. But of course, not everything goes as planned in the new pizzeria, which becomes incredibly obvious once you hear that the old night shift guard was moved to the morning shift after some... incidents. The old animatronics have been put down, with their dismantled remains tossed aside over at the parts and service room. However, it doesn't matter much, because the new animatronics seem to have picked up the habits of the old ones. There's the new Bonnie and Chica, who will try and flank you from the vents and give you only a few seconds to react. And then there's Freddy, who will appear in your office and give you a fraction of a second to react. However, in addition to them, there's also Balloon Boy and Mangle, who will also come from the vents, and the puppet, which you have to keep in check by constantly winding up the music box in the prize room.
Now, there are no longer doors in the game, so your defense options are pretty limited. However, to compensate for this, you have an old Freddy Fazbear mask to put on whenever the animatronics are in the office, so as to fool them that you're one of them. You have a few seconds to put on the mask whenever you see any animatronics peeking out of the vents. However, for Freddy, who just gets right up to your desk, you have only a fraction of a second, or it's game over.
Freddy isn't the only one who follows this pattern of popping into your office, though. In addition to him, most of the old animatronics also follow this trend of popping into your office and giving you no time to react. The old animatronics start showing up on night 3, with Chica coming in from the right and Bonnie coming in from the left. But both of them, as well as Freddy, pop right into your office and give you precious little time to react. Like the first game, however, Old Foxy follows an entirely different pattern, and you need to learn this pattern quickly if you want to make it anywhere past the second night. Old Foxy stands at the end of the hall and attacks you whether you have the mask on or not. The only way to stop him is to shine your flashlight at him repeatedly, which forces a system reboot that causes him to go back to where he came from. The flashlight has limited power though, so you have to ration it accordingly. In other words, if you run out of flashlight power, you're at Foxy's mercy. Now, let's backtrack a bit and talk about Balloon Boy and the puppet. Why are these two so important? Well, if Balloon Boy is allowed to get into your office, he completely disables the lights. No vent lights, no camera lights, no flashlights, and pretty much no hope to win against Foxy. As for the puppet, if you don't keep track of the music box and keep it wound up, the puppet will play a jingle and straight up kill you. So really, it's in your best interest to keep an eye on both of them.
Between the new quartet, the old quartet, the Balloon Boy, and the puppet, that makes a grand total of 10 animatronics to be on the lookout for. And just like the first game, the name of the game is to survive their onslaught for 5 nights. Now, from a gameplay standpoint, you only have a few options available to you. You can either click on the lights in the vents to check if there are any animatronics there, or shine your flashlight down the hall by pressing the control key. Aside from that, you can also pull down your mask, or you can pull up the cameras. However, when you have your mask on, you can't do anything. And when you're looking at the cameras, your only options are to shine a light in each room, or to wind up the music box.
As far as the presentation goes, the game goes for the same approach as its predecessor. The focus is on dark environments, with various rundown elements of the restaurant bringing attention to the unsettling nature of things. The game uses various audio cues to lead the player on, ranging from radio static, haunting gusts of wind, clock chimes, and of course...
God damn it, I knew he was out there!
However, the graphics themselves are mostly still images, stretched out into panoramas for the sake of giving the illusion of death. The only instances where the images are animated in some way is during the jump scares, with the different animatronics all having different kill screens. There are also various minigames that crop up in between deaths, as well as short segments where you look through the eyes of what we assume is the Freddy animatronic in the old location. However, the Freddy segments are more panoramas that further the mystery of the animatronics, and the minigames are short Atari 26-esque segments that not only do the same thing, but more often than not end in a jump scare.
Now, I've mentioned before that this game has a lot of optional depth, but that is not really required to play the game from beginning to end. However, not touching on it would be a huge disservice, so we're going to be heading into spoiler territory now. If you don't want to be spoiled since this is still a new game, skip to this timestamp in the video, because we'll be going into spoilers here in 3, 2, 1...
Now, each night starts with a phone call. You can either choose to mute the call or listen to what the guy on the phone has to say. For the most part, the phone guy serves as a rather humorous tutorial. However, the further into the game you get, the more plot points he starts dropping on you. From night 3 and on, some weird stuff starts happening. Rumors start going around involving the legitimacy of the establishment, and the phone guy tries really hard to dispel your fears. On night 4 though, you find out that the animatronics have started acting odd during the day, thanks to someone having tampered with their facial recognition software. By the time night 5 rolls around, the building is on lockdown, especially concerning previous employees. You're also informed that the day shift position opened up, so by this point you can probably guess that something's definitely not right. Once you beat night 5 though, you finally earn your paycheck. And it's at this point that you find out that the game is actually a prequel to the first, with this one taking place in 1987. Night 6 reinforces this by mentioning that not only is the place closing down, but the phone guy will be taking over the night shift after you. The company will also be destroying the new animatronics, but keeping the old ones in the hopes of reopening its doors at a later date. The trigger for all this, according to the phone guy, is that someone used the Golden Freddy suit in the back for some unspecified reason. What does this mean for you? Well, it means that on night 6 you have to deal with the 11th animatronic, Golden Freddy. That's right, Golden Freddy's back. And like the old animatronics, you need to react quickly to his presence in your office. With him, this makes 11 animatronics to keep track of, making night 6 the single hardest night in the game.
Damn it.
Now, there's also Custom Night, which can be as hard as you want to make it. You can alter the difficulty for each animatronic individually, except for the puppet, since it's controlled by player actions. Beating Custom Night on different presets earns you different toys that you can put on your desk. Aside from that, all you get for completing Custom Night is a pink slip. So this is basically the good end, since you get to leave this hellhole. For all intents and purposes, Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is a very simple game. The story is easy to figure out, the gameplay is minimalistic at best, and the presentation is pretty plain. It's obvious that, from a technical standpoint, not a lot went into the game when compared to a AAA title or even other indie games. Nonetheless, that doesn't stop it from being an interesting experience, nor does it diminish the effort that went into the game. The key thing with this game is that it does a lot with how little it has to work with. Even though all these different parts of the game are simple at best, they work together in such a way that it brings out the depth and complexity hidden in the game. It's really hard to summarize, so I'm not gonna. Instead, let's tackle each element of the game individually, and maybe you guys can see what I'm talking about.
The story is a good place to start, if only because it's a pretty straightforward example of what I'm talking about. The initial concept for the story, the whole survive 5 nights thing, its complexity is right up there with Save the Princess as far as story narratives go. However, the more you play the game, the more complicated it becomes to survive those 5 nights. Because not only does the gameplay get more difficult, obviously, but the narrative starts telling you things about the story that you didn't know before. Sometimes these things answer questions about what's going on, and sometimes they don't. My point, however, is that it furthers the mystery of the animatronics, and makes people genuinely curious to learn more about what's going on, whether through its answers or its lack of answers. This is how a game encourages speculation.
Ultimately, the story is multi-layered. It gives the people interested in the mystery plenty of details to find, but none of these details are needed to enjoy the core game. It's a good approach to take with storytelling, and it definitely works well with this game. However, the story for a horror game is only as good as its presentation, so let's take a look at that. The presentation follows the same approach of doing a lot with a little that the story takes. The dark panoramas, eerie still images, and haunting sounds of the presentation do a lot to bring out the mystery and the story. Everything is covered in darkness, and the security cameras are constantly shrouded in static. It encourages the player to look around, to pay attention, to look for details that could help them with surviving. The audio cues are a great example of this, mostly because the game never tells you anything about them. The game leaves it up to you to look for them and figure out what they mean. The first game had audio cues, of course, but they weren't quite as important there as they are here. In this game, learning these audio cues is integral to survival, and could be the difference between 6 AM and Foxy jumping for your face.
Damn it! Too much to keep track of!
Constant trial and error made me realize that the dial-up noise meant that Mangle was in the room, and that the windy clock chime sound meant that either Foxy was down the hall, or that the animatronics were in the immediate vicinity of the office. It's a great example of the game training you to look for things it doesn't tell you to look for, and it's a subtle nudge to the player to unravel the mystery of Freddy Fazbear's.
Now, the gameplay is where this sequel shows the most progress. Not only are there more animatronics to keep track of, but the variety in their attack patterns makes it that much more challenging to keep track of everything. Of course, there's an element of luck to it all, since there's a random number generator dictating when the animatronics are going to attack. However, there's a lot more direct input on the player's part, and the number of different patterns and animatronics to keep track of makes it a lot easier to mess up.
The game takes its time introducing the animatronics to you, with the first night introducing the new animatronics, the second night reintroducing Foxy, the third night throwing the old animatronics into the mix, and so on. It does a good job of having the difficulty scale with the player, slowly introducing you to the different threats in the game before ramping up the difficulty for the later nights. The different patterns being introduced at different nights also ensures that the gameplay stays fresh, and that the game has something to fall back on when the jump scares stop being scary. To that extent, the lack of doors makes sure that there's no break from the tension, ensuring that the jump scares are that much scarier for that much longer.
Oh, I am actually shaking! I am shaking!
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 draws its terror from a good mixture of ambiguity and tension, creating a horror experience that legitimately relies on making the player feel helpless. Its story and presentation do a good job of telling the player something is there without providing any concrete details, while its gameplay promotes tension through the multiple things you have to manage each night to survive. However, as fantastic as the terrifying nature of the game is, I'm honestly more impressed by how the mechanics of the game were put together. Every aspect of the game screams low budget, but it does so much with how little it has that it's no wonder that both this and the first game are as popular as they are.
The story, gameplay, and presentation work in tandem to provide a great experience, leagues better than what the first game had to offer. Not only is there a multi-layered mystery here for the player to unravel, but even without it, the gameplay is plenty challenging on its own. The game encourages multiple playthroughs, and even rewards you with the tools to alter the experience once you beat Night 6. For a game that's had a development cycle of maybe 4 months, this is pretty dang impressive.
If there's one thing that I think could have seen some more improvement, it's the graphics. I understand that the stretched out panoramas and still images worked pretty well in the first game, but I figured that a sequel would do a bit more work to improve the assets, or the engine, or just anything technical in general. Nonetheless, the overall presentation was still plenty terrifying, and the new locale still brought something fresh to the table. So really the game doesn't need the better visuals, because it achieves what it wants to do without them. Overall, the game is a pretty well-crafted experience, and it deserves all the attention it's getting. However, once you get past the 5th night, the jump scares just stop being scary in the face of Night 6 difficulty. If you enjoyed the challenge more than the scares, then yeah, give Night 6 a shot. As for me, well, I'll just leave you guys with my reaction to beating Night 6, and maybe you'll understand why I'm not touching it again.
Oh, come on! Come on! Come on! Come on! Holy shit! Yes! Yes! You game!
Five Nights at Freddy's 2 is a fantastic sequel. It acknowledges what made the first game what it was, and expands on it by creating an experience that's similar, but not quite the same. The game takes some chances by introducing some new elements to the core formula. Things like more animatronics to ramp up the tension, and different attack patterns to make the gameplay that much more challenging. However, it never strays too far from the original core gameplay, ensuring an experience that, while still different, is unmistakably familiar to fans of the original. Before I continue though, I want to address something. I know it's weird for me to be talking about a good game for once, since we're always so focused on taking apart bad games and putting them back together in a way that isn't terrible. However, I want to bring attention to good game design when I can, since I think that's an important thing to cover when it comes to analyzing video games. The whole point of the show is to learn more about video game design, whether it's good design or bad design. To that extent, we can't just take a look at bad video games and talk about how we can make them better. We need to also take a look at good video games and talk about what makes them better. Having said that, and coming back to the original topic, would I replay Five Nights at Freddy's 2? Hell no! This game was an absolute test of my patience, and I've reached levels of frustration with this game that I didn't know were even possible for me. Not to say that it shouldn't be played, I mean it is a good game, and it does encourage multiple playthroughs, but just...
Bonnie. Oh, God. God damn it. Oh, my God.
Oh, that was too slow. I think that was way too slow.
I'm trembling right now.
1,
Keep track of. 4. I am actually shaking. I am shaking.
Nope!
Hey guys, a couple of quick announcements. First off, I'll be out of state for the latter half of December, so there won't be any new videos around then. However, I've been trying to make an effort to stream more often, so I can hang out with you guys when I can. I'm Super Gamesbuster over on Twitch, so feel free to drop by anytime. Having said that, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. If you want to watch more videos, check out my Buck Bumble analysis over on the left, or my mini breakdown of the original Five Nights at Freddy's over on the right. Also, a quick thanks to Sayonara Maxwell and the Living Tombstones for making such fantastic music. I'll have links to their music down in the description below if you guys want to check them out. And lastly, don't forget to check me out on Facebook, Twitter, or Tumblr if you want to stay up to date. For now, I'll see you guys later.